So, you will be creating your own art composition. Before you do that, let us go back to the basics and talk about the elements of art. Considered as the basic element of art, line is identified as an extension of a point or a connection between 2 points. In design, line has its different uses. One is to organize by separating or grouping elements on a composition, texturize by using specific types of lines to suggest or simulate a rough or smooth texture, guide the eye by using lines as arrows or in other ways that lead the eye to certain parts of the composition, provide movement with wavy lines that suggest moving water, or vary line thickness to create an illusion of shape and movement. And lastly, make a statement by using lines of different sizes and contrast. And lines can also impose different ideas and emotions if used in an artwork, such as vertical lines. Vertical lines are seen as tall and represent grandeur. On the other hand, horizontal lines indicate a sense of motionless rest and peace. Horizontal and vertical lines, if used together in a square or inside a rectangular shape, convey structure and represent stability. Diagonal lines move the eye in a direction and indicate movement and fluidity. Shallow curves are relaxing, while deep curves usually represent violence. And a series of diagonal lines with abrupt changes of direction give chaos to the design that puts off a sense of energy. Now, what happens if a line meets another line? Then they simply meet their ends. Anyway, what really happens is that they form or make a shape. Shape is defined as any set of existing or imaginary lines that implies a space. I've mentioned imaginary because there are shapes that do not occupy space. These shapes are formed by other shapes that surrounds them. Negative shapes are empty spaces created around any existing shapes. Here are examples of negative shapes. On the other hand, we identify the existing shapes or the actual shapes as positive shapes. These shapes are the shapes that occupy space. Playing with positive and negative shapes in an art composition makes it interesting to look at, and me, personally, I find posters that utilizes these shapes very creative. Parang pinag-isipan kasi ng maigi ng artist ang konsepto na sa halip na ipakita ang aktwal na hugis, espasyo lang ang ginamit para mapakita ang ideya. Another way of categorizing shapes is by its kind, telling whether it's geometric or organic. Geometric shapes are identified as shapes created or invented by men. Here are some examples. On the flip side, organic shapes are usually found in nature and are free-form. Here are some examples of organic shapes. Another difference between geometric and organic shapes is geometric shapes have definite names and organic shapes don't. Shapes can also make us feel a certain way. Shapes with rounded edges are softer and more approachable, while shapes with sharp lines and edges depict strength and presence. When it comes to the use of shape in design and layout, designers use shapes to symbolize ideas or concepts. Another element of art is form. Basically, forms are the 3D versions of shapes. For example, a circle is a shape and its counterpart form is a sphere. Forms also can be categorized as geometric and organic. Geometric forms are man-made and have definite names, and in contrast, organic forms are random free forms, usually found in nature with no specific names. Forms are usually identified in sculptures because sculptures are tangible 3D works of art. However, forms can also be created visually, and that is with the help of 3 other elements of art such as texture, value, and space. Now, talking about texture, texture is the element of art that is identified how one part of an artwork feels when you look at it or when you touch it. Textures that we can identify through touching are tactile or actual textures. Contrariwise, there are textures that you can identify by looking at it, creating illusions or effects. These are called visual textures. Textures can serve as fillers in your composition and can also impose different concepts such as excitement, chaos, calmness, rigidity, and many more. Without textures on your composition, your artwork might look like this soup.
Nice.
Now, let's move to space. Space, as an element of art, concerns the positioning of the other elements, the layers of space, and the space occupied and not occupied, and the illusions created using space. A composition is always divided into 3 layers of space: the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. Shapes or forms added in the foreground must occupy bigger spaces to create that illusion that they are near the viewer. And as the object goes further and further towards the background, the space it occupies gets smaller and smaller. This illusion is made better with the other elements of art, with value and color. As an object gets farther and farther, its value gets lighter and lighter. In terms of color, foreground objects are inclined to have deeper and warmer colors, while background objects tend to have faded and cooler colors. Value is simply the lightness and darkness of colors, and it deals directly with light. We see things because light reflects off of objects and goes into our eyes. Our mind processes the light and rationalizes what we are seeing. Without light, we cannot see anything. In order to draw or paint in a way that creates an illusion of what we normally see, we must fully understand light and how it reacts on surfaces. Value is the key in creating the illusion of light. This is why value is so incredibly important to drawing and painting. The lightest value is white, while black is considered as the darkest value. And just like color, value can bring life to a composition by manipulating its contrast and creating depth. If you are new to adding a touch of realism to your composition, you may use a value scale. A value scale is a rectangular strip that organizes different values. It is used as a guide for applying value on your composition. A full range of value means there are ample amounts of light values, which is also known as tints, and also dark values, which is also known as shades. And using a value scale can help you add a full range of value on your composition. As you use value in creating your drawing, know that the whole point to value is to create the illusion of light. So value is used to basically create the illusion of highlights and shadows. Highlights and shadows combine to create the illusion of a light source. Remember, without light, we cannot see. So technically, without a light source, you have no illusion. I saved color for last because there's a lot to talk about this element. First, let's talk about color psychology and symbolism. Colors tell different feelings or emotions. Colors hold significance for people around the world. Not only do colors influence emotion, but they also hold meaning in religion and various cultures. For example, red, it represents excitement, energy, passion, love, desire. So all things that are intense and passionate are identified with red. Yellow signifies joy, happiness, betrayal, optimism, idealism, hope, sunshine, gold, and friendship. Blue. Blue represents peace, tranquility, whole, calmness, stability, harmony, unity, trust, and confidence. Purple represents royalty, nobility, spirituality, wisdom, enlightenment, and honor. Orange can represent energy, balance, enthusiasm, warmth, vibrant, demanding of attention. Green, it's mostly found in nature, so it represents nature, environment, good health, or being healthy, youth, spring, and fertility. White represents reverence, purity, birth, simplicity, cleanliness, and peace. In the Western cultures, white represents marriage, and Eastern cultures, it's identified as death. Black is usually associated with power, sexuality, sophistication, formality, elegance, fear, evil, mourning, and death, especially for the Western cultures. Okay, now let's talk about color theory. My thoughts about color theory, for me, it's confusing, especially at first, because there are a lot of color theories out there. But what I will be sharing to you for today, for this session, is what I have learned so far. When we are in the primary grade levels, the primary colors are identified as red, blue, and yellow. These colors are mixed to create the secondary colors. Like red plus blue makes violet, blue plus yellow makes green, and red plus yellow makes orange. However, as I continue to teach art class, I discovered that what's accepted as basic primaries these days are these two sets of colors. Light or additive color primaries, which are red, green, and blue. So yellow is out of the picture. Again, red, green, and blue. The second one is pigment or subtractive color primaries, which are cyan, magenta, and yellow. For the color wheel, allow me to use the RBY model, and let's label it as the traditional color wheel, where the primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. As it is easier to explain the color scheme using this kind of color wheel. Now let's talk about color schemes. Now listen, because this part, I believe, is what you can use or apply the most on your art compositions, because we're going to talk about color schemes. A color scheme consists of a combination of colors used in a range of design disciplines, from fine art to interior design to graphic design. Each color scheme consists of one or more of the 12 colors present on the color wheel. By pairing different colors with each other, you can create endless color palettes to use in any composition. Different color combinations evoke different moods or tones by using color theory or color psychology. Thinking of a color palette for your work can be overwhelming and time-consuming. Luckily, you don't have to sit for hours trying out every color combination to find one that looks good, because you can already use the tried and tested true color schemes on your artwork. And these color schemes are monochromatic, complementary, analogous, and triadic. Now let's talk about monochromatic color schemes first. Monochromatic color schemes focus on a single color, often using variations of that hue by incorporating tints, tones, and shades. And by adding hints of white, gray, or black, that single color expands into an entire palette with varying amounts of value. Those tints, tones, and shades provide highlights and shadows to spruce up an otherwise flat color palette. This color scheme is extremely versatile and easy on the eye. Using many hues in a design can often lead to a clash in colors and obstruct the design's appearance. Contrasting color variations on one hue helps to simplify a design without making it too flat. A monochromatic palette doesn't mean the color choice has to be boring or expected. The color choice just needs to work within the context of the brand or the design or your composition. When you're using this color scheme, be sure to know the base color psychology and how it impacts the product or design's tone and mood. Because there is typically only one hue to focus on, it is crucial to incorporate elements of contrast to guide the eye throughout. So that is why it is important to incorporate value to your monochromatic color scheme. So add tints, shades, and shadows. Next color scheme is the complementary color scheme. Complementary colors exist on opposite sides of the color wheel. One color is usually the primary color and the other is the secondary color. The main complementary colors are typically blue and orange, red and green, and yellow and purple. Colors opposite each other on the color wheel typically provide high contrast when paired together. At full saturation, complementary hues can be too intense for the viewer. To tone down the intensity, incorporate tints, tones, and shadows to extend the palette just as we did with the monochromatic color scheme. When done successfully, complementary palettes can make a huge impact on a design. The pairing of a warm and cool hue provides a rich and eye-catching contrast. Next, analogous colors. Analogous colors consist of a group of 3 colors that border each other within the color wheel. This color scheme starts off with a base hue and is extended with 2 neighboring hues. The word analogous means closely related, so the combination of these hues has a harmonious appeal similar to that of monochromatic color schemes. These palettes are known as to be pleasing to the eyes, so if you're unsure of which color scheme to use in your next project, an analogous color palette never disappoints. It is always safe to use. When picking analogous groups for your project, keep your palette grounded by using exclusively cool or warm colors together. If you need color inspiration, you can take a look around you. Analogous palettes are routinely found in nature. And the last color scheme that we will be talking about is the triadic color scheme. A triad consists of 3 colors that are placed equidistant from each other on the color wheel, forming a triangle. Triadic color schemes can include 3 primary, secondary, or tertiary colors. Common triadic palettes consist of blue, red, and yellow, or violet, green, and orange. And most triadic palettes are vibrant and can be difficult to balance. So to address this, you can assign one hue or one base hue, then use the remaining hues as accent colors. When all colors in a triadic scheme are being used equally, each hue often fights for the spotlight, and it's kinda hurtful to look at. A good way to prevent this clash of colors is to establish a hierarchy within the composition. So for example, you've chosen a triadic color scheme, red, blue, and yellow. So choose among those hues which should stand out on your composition. Okay, for example, it should be red. So that means blue can be lighter and yellow can also be lighter or appear to be fading. So red will be brighter, okay, and will have deeper intensity. As with the other color schemes, avoid using all three hues in their fully saturated state. So bring in the hints of white, gray, or black to tone down the vibrancy and expand on the palette. And that's it for this video. I hope as you create your art composition, you think about the elements of art that you will be incorporating with your artwork. How these elements interact with one another will surely and greatly affect the message or the concept that you want to show through your artwork. And that's it. Goodbye and thank you everyone, and see you when I see you. Adios.